Hey everyone, welcome back to Civil Score. So glad you're here. We are continuing our Polity series where we are systematically covering all the important articles from a UPSC Prelims point of view, one topic at a time. In our last class, we covered Articles 19 to 22, the right to freedom. Today we move forward to the next two sets of fundamental rights, the right against exploitation under Articles 23 and 24, and the right to freedom of religion under Articles 25 to 28. These are genuinely high yield for prelims, especially because of the nuances involved. So let us get right into it. Before we dive into individual articles, let us get the structure clear. Today's class has two broad pillars. The first pillar is the right against exploitation, which covers Article 23 and Article 24. Article 23 prohibits trafficking in human beings and forced labor, and Article 24 bans child labor in hazardous workplaces. The second pillar is the right to freedom of religion, which runs from Article 25 to Article 28. Article 25 deals with individual religious freedom. Article 26 covers the rights of religious denominations as a group. Article 27 deals with the prohibition on religious taxes. And Article 28 lays down the rules on religious instruction in educational institutions. Together, these 6 articles reflect two very important constitutional values: dignity and secularism. Let us now go through each one. Article 23 is one of the strongest prohibitions in the entire Constitution. It does 3 things. First, traffic in human beings is strictly prohibited. This means any form of buying, selling, or trading of human beings as if they were objects is a constitutional offence. Second, Begar is banned. Begar refers to unpaid and involuntary labor, where a person is forced to work without any wages. Third, all similar forms of forced labor are also declared illegal. And the consequence is very clear. Any violation of Article 23 is a punishable offence under law. Now here is a very important note for prelims that distinguishes Article 23 from most other fundamental rights. This right protects against both the state and private individuals. Most fundamental rights only operate against the state. Article 23 goes further and binds private persons as well, which makes it uniquely powerful. Now, Article 23 is not absolute. There is one exception built into it. The state can impose compulsory service on citizens, but only for public purposes. Classic examples are military conscription and mandatory civic duties. However, the Constitution puts a very clear limitation on this power. When the state imposes such compulsory service, it cannot discriminate solely on the basis of religion, race, caste, or class. So the state can ask citizens to serve, but it must do so in a non-discriminatory manner. This is a clean and frequently tested point. The exception exists, but it comes with a non-discrimination condition attached to it. Article 24 is short and sharp. It says, no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or engaged in any other hazardous employment. This is an absolute prohibition. There is no exception here. Now, the key prelims catch on this article is very important. Article 24 does not ban all child employment. It specifically bans employment of children below 14 in hazardous settings like factories, mines, and similar environments. If the work is harmless or innocent in nature, Article 24 does not come into play. So you should not say Article 24 prohibits all child labor. It prohibits child labor in hazardous workplaces. That distinction is exactly the kind of thing UPSC will test. Now we move to the right to freedom of religion. Article 25 is about the individual's religious freedom. It says that all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and propagate religion. Let us understand each of these four elements. Conscience refers to the inner freedom to form one's own relationship with the divine. It is the most personal dimension of religious freedom. Profess means the right to declare your religious beliefs openly and publicly. Practice means you can perform religious worship, rituals, and ceremonies. Propagate means you can transmit and spread your religious beliefs to others. One important point: propagate does not mean the right to convert someone by force, fraud, or inducement. It only covers peaceful sharing of religious beliefs. And importantly, Article 25 is available to all persons, not just citizens. Both citizens and non-citizens can claim it. Article 25 comes with filters. The freedom under Article 25 is subject to public order, morality, and health. And it is also subject to other provisions of Part 3, meaning other fundamental rights can restrict it. For example, a religious practice that involves untouchability cannot claim the protection of Article 25 because Article 17, abolishing untouchability, would override it. On the state's power, the Constitution says the state can regulate secular activities associated with religion and can also throw open Hindu public religious institutions to all classes of Hindus. There are also two important constitutional explanations in Article 25 itself. Explanation says that wearing and carrying of kirpans is included in the profession of the Sikh religion. So Sikhs carrying kirpans as part of their religious identity are constitutionally protected. Explanation 2 says that for the purpose of this article, Hindus shall be construed to include persons professing Sikh, Jain, or Buddhist religions. Both of these are direct prelims facts. This comparison is extremely important for prelims, so pay full attention. Article 25 protects individuals. Article 26 protects groups, specifically religious denominations or sections thereof. Both are subject to public order, morality, and health. But here is where they differ significantly. Article 25 is explicitly made subject to other fundamental rights under Part 3. So, for example, a religious practice that involves discrimination based on caste can be challenged using Article 17. Article 26, however, is not explicitly subjected to other provisions of Part 3 in the constitutional text. So denominational rights have a slightly broader textual protection from being overridden by other fundamental rights. This is a nuanced but tested distinction. Article 25 individual freedom is subject to Part 3. Article 26 denominational freedom is not explicitly so. This comparison is extremely important for prelims, so pay full attention. Article 25 protects individuals. Article 26 protects groups, specifically religious denominations or sections thereof. Both are subject to public order, morality, and health. But here is where they differ significantly. Article 25 is explicitly made subject to other fundamental rights under Part 3. So, for example, a religious practice that involves discrimination based on caste can be challenged using Article 17. Article 26, however, is not explicitly subjected to other provisions of Part 3 in the constitutional text. So denominational rights have a slightly broader textual protection from being overridden by other fundamental rights. This is a nuanced but tested distinction. Article 25, individual freedom, is subject to Part 3. Article 26, denominational freedom, is not explicitly so. Article 27 is a clean secularism provision. It says, no person shall be compelled to pay any taxes, the proceeds of which are specifically appropriated for the promotion or maintenance of any particular religion or religious denomination. In simple terms, the state cannot use your tax money to fund or promote a specific religion. This is a direct expression of the secular character of the Indian state. Now, there is a very important UPSC insight here. Article 27 prohibits a tax, not a fee. There is a legal distinction between the two. A tax is a compulsory levy whose proceeds go into general revenue without a specific return to the payer. A fee is charged for a specific service rendered. So the state can levy a fee, say for providing security, cleaning services, or managing infrastructure at a religious site, because that fee funds a secular service, not a religious activity. But the state cannot levy a tax whose proceeds go directly to promote or maintain a religion. Tax bad, fee acceptable. Remember that for prelims. Article 28 deals with religious instruction in educational institutions, and it works on a tiered system based on who funds and runs the institution. There are 4 categories. Category 1. Institutions wholly maintained out of state funds. Here, religious instruction is completely prohibited. No exceptions. Category 2. Institutions administered by the state but established under a trust or endowment that requires religious instruction. Here, religious instruction is permitted if the founding trust or endowment requires it. Category 3. Institutions that are merely recognized by the state but not directly run by it. Here, religious instruction is allowed but purely on a voluntary basis, and the consent of the person attending is required. If that person is a minor, the guardian's consent is explicitly required. Category 4. Institutions receiving aid from state funds. Same rule as Category 3 applies. Voluntary attendance only, with consent required, and guardian's consent if the student is a minor. So the stricter the state's financial and administrative involvement, the stricter the prohibition on religious instruction. This table is a direct prelims question pattern. Know all 4 categories. Let us put it all together with one final revision. We covered 3 themes today. Theme 1 was exploitation, Articles 23 and 24. The key takeaways are that Article 23 provides absolute protection against trafficking and forced labor and operates against both state and private individuals. Article 24 bans child labor below 14 years, specifically in hazardous settings, not all work. And state conscription is allowed under Article 23 but cannot discriminate on religion, race, caste, or class. Theme 2 was religious boundaries, Articles 25 and 26. Article 25 protects individual religious freedom and is subject to other fundamental rights. Article 26 protects denominational religious freedom and is not explicitly subjected to Part 3. Both are subject to public order, morality, and health. And remember the Kirpan explanation and the Hindu definition in Article 25. Theme 3 was state secularism, Articles 27 and 28. Article 27 prohibits religious taxes, but not fees. Article 28 creates a tiered framework, full prohibition in fully state-funded institutions, and voluntary participation with consent in recognized or state-aided ones. That is a wrap on Articles 23 to 28. This was a dense class with a lot of prelims gold in it. Take your time revising, mark the comparison points, and keep moving forward. You are doing great. See you in the next class. Take care, everyone.